Hey there, everybody. Hope you're doing great. Welcome to Sherman's seminar series. Doing this on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitch, Periscope, and also on Instagram and the Sherman on Mutual Mahad um, page. And so I want to be able to, again, share some of the thoughts when it comes to a variety of different financial topics, be able to dive in here today on Social Security. So this is ideal for people that are approaching that age, right? You're 60 years old, 62, 65, 67. 70, and you want to be able to have a look at Social Security. We'll talk about how important it is, why someone would want to be able to make sure that they're taking it at the right time to be able to make sure that they can get the most out of that benefit. At the same time, I know for a lot of my demographic, particularly those that are not in that age range, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to have a look at how this can be affecting you or your parents or your grandparents at this particular time. So let's dive right in, shall we? So first off, when it looks at Social Security here, it was first created back in 1935, coming off of the Great Depression. FDR saw that those that seemed to be hit the most hard, or hit the hardest due to the Great Depression, was those that were kind of the poorest of the poor, the widows, the orphaned, those that were older in age that were no longer working or relying on somebody else to help provide for them, and so they launched the program back in 1935. At that time, there was 16 workers paying into the system for every person that was going to potentially leverage that. So the benefit of Social Security, the expectation was people that were living until age 21 at that particular time period, their life expectancy was 65. So when you kind of look at it, they expected that people, if they did get any benefits, um, they would be eligible for like 13 years and then they would pass away. However, right now, it's far exceeding that. Right now, at the time back then, about 7 million people would fit that criteria. However, you fast forward after the baby boomers have kind of come in. Right now, our workforce, there's three workers for every retiree. And when the baby boomers, those that were born 1946 to 1964, are fully retired, we're going to see that dramatically decrease to two workers for every one that's fully retired. And so it's not too difficult from a mathematical perspective. But we'll just have a look at how legislation needs to have some changes, or we're going to start having to really change the way benefits are going. That data, by the way, was from 2018's SSA.gov from June 5th, 2018 stats. So one of the major things kind of hitting on this in the backbone is back in, what was it? Um, just this week that Social Security came out and said, we anticipate us um, overspending more than we're receiving in Social Security 1 year earlier. So 2023. So basically, in like 12 to 13 years, it's anticipated if nothing's done to Social Security, it's not even going to have enough funds to be able to provide what level it is right now. So it's a major issue, especially for some of those. So today, in our SHRM seminar series here, talking about Social Security, I want to dive in here and talk about how people can better understand how Social Security is affecting them, ultimately how what are some of the misconceptions, because there's been a lot of changes to Social Security over the last few years, and also ultimately how is it ultimately being utilized. So when we look at why it's so important, is that for those that are 65 and older, it equates to almost 40, but basically 37% of their source of income. And as companies continue to erode away at that private pension area, um, that means there's going to be more of a requirement or need for people to be saving on their own, whether that's in their company 401k or a 403b through a nonprofit, or some kind of school organization. And so it puts a lot more responsibility on us to be able to take control of that. So when somebody decides to apply for benefits, they need to have all their documentation ready. So one of the most easy for most people is to be able to can do this online. If they have access, they can go to ssa.gov and start filling out, and projecting out what their Social Security will look like when they hit those ages. So right now, in order to qualify for benefits, you need to work 40 quarters. So if you think about that, that'd be like 10 years of full employment. And when you kind of look at the different things that are going to be talked about, they use these different abbreviations. The average index monthly earnings is basically what on average was that person pulling in. So if we look at it looks at kind of like their last 35 years as they paid into Social Security, what was their average um, income during that particular time. So if you're self-employed, you might have reduced a lot of your tax liability, thus your Social Security benefit then will be that much smaller. Full retirement age is continually changing, so definitely want to have a look at that. Depending on your age, it might be different from when you first originally thought. I think a lot of people thought 65 was the number, but over the last change of legislation, it changes as your age, right? So I think right now, if you're wanting to retire, full retirement age is 66 years and about 6 months. But each year after that, it gradually increases until people that are born after 1959. So right now, with us potentially spending more than we're collecting in Social Security, there's going to be a talk of not being able to get 100% of your benefit, and we'll see where that kind of pans out. So right now, if you can retire, if you want to file early, that'd be age 62. A lot of times you can look at those benefits, you can run an analysis and see kind of what's the ideal age. For right now, for people, it's basically 66 to 67. Then of course they can delay it to age 70. And we'll talk a little bit later about what the benefit of that would be if you decided to do that. So in order to calculate your benefit, you can take your highest wages that you earned over the last 35 years, divided into 35 to be able to get basically an average, and then divide that by 12, and that gives you your monthly average. Okay. Um, but again, this is done through the Social Security website when you log in as yourself. Now, you could go in person. Right now, due to COVID, I know that they have some restrictions. So, depending on your community, you might have to schedule an appointment in order to do that. Anticipate as well when you go in person, they're not allowed to give you advice on what you should be doing for your particular predicament. Right. So if you go in at age 62 and you ask them, hey, should I take it now at 62 or should I wait 4 years? They can't give you that advice. Um, they're just there to help people process what's eligible to them. So you can definitely go to your SSA.gov and check out my Social Security account. That way you can be able to see exactly what it looks like. So for yourself, when you look here at the kind of web page, this is what it would look like as you go onto the SSA.gov website. Then you'll be able to see this. Now, some people, like myself, that are a little bit longer in the working years, you might remember that occasionally, sometimes kind of every other year, it seemed like that they would send it. They would send you this in the mail, but due to the more email heavy that we are, and plus add on top of it that we're it's accessible on their website. You can now just access this at ssa.gov, so they no longer mail this out to people. And then what it'll do here is it'll show you your benefits based on the way that you're working, and how your income and your working has affected your Social Security. So right now, if you look at this, Congress, this is the quote, okay, and I'm going to read it because it's important to understand the dialogue that's coming. This is straight from Social Security, right? So this is not a political statement, nor is it meant to be a emotionally charged. It is fact. But this comes from Social Security that your estimated benefits are based on current law. Congress had made changes to the law in the past and can do so at any time. That's true. The law governing benefits amounts may change because by 2034, the payroll taxes collected will be enough to pay only about 79% of scheduled benefits. So, in other words, if they and that came down 1 year just due to what we went through last year due to the global pandemic, that came down to 2033. So, in other words, come 2033, if no legislation changes in the next 12 years, people will start receiving 79% of what their benefit is scheduled as anticipated to pay. So, let's say, for example, you're scheduled to receive $1,000 a month for simple math. you would only get $790 instead of the 1,000. Major blow to a lot of people's finances, especially as we talked about. That equates to about 37% of people's retirement pictures. Now, I'd say that's on average, right? For some other people, that might be 60% of the retirement picture. And so this is a sizable shift if they're starting to get that major, about 21% decrease on their cash flow. Um, so the maximum that someone can get is 3,011, okay, based on their working years. And then look at the overall average, though. We're looking at someone close to 2,000, almost 500 as a married couple. Um, a very, very large amount of someone's retirement picture. Um, So what can someone do as they're looking at planning for the future? Any income, by the way, over 142,800 doesn't add more to your Social Security benefit. Okay. So what happens when you withdraw at age 62? This is what we call early benefits. Is that your benefit of what, let's say, is again this $1,000 a month? It's going to be reduced by 30%. So 1,000 is what it would be at your full retirement age, like 66 and 6 months. Now you took it at age 62, you're only going to get 700 because you're getting a 30% decrease. Okay. Um, Also, um, when you take it early, you can still work, but it's going to affect how it's being taxed. It, as in Social Security. Okay, so for those that retire at full benefit, full retirement age, their benefits will reduce $1 for every two. Anything over 18,960. So let's say you have that part-time job working at the Home Depot. If you make over 20,000, let's say, no, sorry, over 18,960. So let's say you made 24,000 for the year. That means from a dollar amount, 18,961 to 24,000, that would all get taxed at 60%. Okay, so because every dollar um, out of two is going to be taxed over that amount. Okay. Um, Prior to that, if you aren't full retirement year, your benefit is taxed reduced $1 for every three. There is an opportunity to qualify for spousal benefit, and so those are ideal for a lot of people in their situations. So let's talk about that, what that might look like. So first is if you are a widow. So in other words, you were married at one point, and your spouse passed away. You can take your benefits at age 60 instead of 62. So your early actually is at age 60, but it'll reduce 30%, just like it is at age 62. So you want to be smart with your strategy here. Um, the other thing is just be aware, if you worked for the federal government, your Social Security tax system, so you didn't ever pay into it, so you actually wouldn't be getting any Social Security benefit. Um, Next is your pension in regards to being a benefit to your surviving spouse would reduce as much as 2/3, right? So they would lose basically 34% of your government pension. So there were some major changes that had occurred back in 2015. And so what happened in that act is called the Budget Act of 2008, 2015. It made some big changes in Social Security. Number one was there was some unintended loopholes that were created for married couples, and so basically you could tap into Social Security benefit while the other spouse was still working and while they were not pulling their Social Security. That allowed the other surviving spouse to be able to basically pull out a benefit when neither of them were actually on Social Security and neither one of them had passed away. So that's basically closed that one. It was called survivorship. Sorry, spousal benefit, but no longer an option. Um, the next one is this might give some individuals that to be able to take a benefit during a particular time period. So, one is called file and suspend. So, in 2016, a person who is at or past full time retirement age, right? So, right now it's about 66 and some months. You could file for your benefits and immediately suspend them, so you're not actually receiving them. Then have your spouse start collecting off benefit um, as a spouse, called spousal benefit, and that would allow them to start receiving some of the Social Security that doesn't actually affect their benefit when they become full retirement age. And that would allow you, the reason why you'd want to file and suspend is that your Social Security actually grows by 8% simple interest, right? Um, until age 70. So for 4 years, you're going to get 8% growth on that number, not compounded, but just on that specific number of the year. All right. Um, some people I know will tune in and they'll go, okay, well, I've already received Social Security. It's already stuck. I'm done. That's how it's going to be. And so those that are already receiving benefits, it's not going to affect you because you took advantage of these things before 2015. All right. So here's an example. If you're in Group One, you're 66 and you elected benefits by May 2016. Um, you are one of the fortunate that you did elect, and so your spouse will benefit or your dependent children will be able to collect off your retirement income. But however, after April 26, 2016, the file and suspend strategy is no longer available. Okay, so for anybody here at 66 and older, after 2016, that can take advantage of this file and suspend option. It was a great option while it lasted. Group number two, though, is if you're 62 by the end of 2015. Okay, so if you're born January 1st, 1954, earlier, that means you'd be about 68, or at least turning 68 this year, um, or 67. 67, actually, I think is the, yeah, 67. Um, you can restrict your benefit age and claim a spousal benefit. However, if you were born before that, that means you're going to be probably 68 or older. You're eligible for spousal benefit just based on the work record of your because of your spouse. So there is still a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a loophole because it makes it sound like there's this um, unethical approach to Social Security, but it's not at all. It's just this is created to be able to allow people to be able to receive a little bit of benefit early. Um, so this is what we call a restricted application. So one of the things just to understand is that when you file for a restricted application for only spousal benefits, sorry, for spousal benefit is the only available at full retirement age, and the rules take effect for people who are currently age 68 to 70. This option is basically phasing out though over the next 2 years. So let's think from the context of this perspective. You're 68 years old, you're still working, you haven't elected to receive Social Security. Your spouse, who is age 64, hasn't elected for Social Security either. So what you can do is you can file and you can just not make any withdrawals or any kind of payments on your Social Security. So you basically file and suspend, and then what happens is your spouse can then apply for spousal benefit under a restricted application and receive some benefit. Okay. Now, for the rest of the people that are born after January 2nd, 1954, which is basically anybody under the age of 60, 67 as of January 2nd, you can no longer do this switch strategy. You can no longer do this file and suspend. So it's makes it unfortunate for those that had that opportunity. One thing, however, in the legislation is that it did positively impact widows, that all widows' planning options are still available. The age requirements we've discussed do not impact widow benefits, only spousal and retirement benefits. It's good news just because it means that the surviving spouse of a deceased worker can still apply and receive survivorship benefits while they receive 8% automatic increase on their own benefit. Okay. Um, and again, for a widow or a widower, I would say let's have a conversation about what that would look like for you. So when people get divorced, it does impact their Social Security. So if your marriage lasted at least 10 years, you can actually receive a spousal benefit based on that previous spouse. If you're 62 and older, and also you're still staying single. If you've gotten remarried, then it might end up being that individual that you're married to leverage. Utilizing their benefits if spousal benefit becomes an option. Um, there used to be an option to be able to pull a lump sum. That no longer is the case. They shut that down. And sometimes a lot of times people ask, okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of part-time work. How's that going to affect my Social Security? So it's not just your Social Security, but it's looking at your entire household income. So here's just how, if you're single, okay, so it's just you. Um, any Social Security under 25,000 is going to be taxed at zero. But if your total income, um, excuse me, is exceeds um, 34,000, you could pay up to 35% on your Social Security. So how does that actually get created or calculated? Excuse me, is they base it on what's called provisional income. Excuse me, that is your adjusted gross income. Okay, what you've earned that year, any kind of tax investments, and then just calculating utilizing only 50% of your Social Security benefit number, and that becomes now your provisional income. Um, so things that aren't included in that easily is Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, and life insurance. Remember, because those three are our tax-free buckets. Um, So there is kind of an optimal way to have a look at receiving your benefits. So I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds here, but you can run basically a Social Security analysis to identify when's the best ideal time based on the benefit that I can get of me tapping into my funds. So you can see here the blue chart is just showing you that's typically people that pulled at age 67 or older, so that full retirement year. And so you can see that they have a much larger amount. At the same time, if they waited until, let's say, age 67, that means they didn't get those funds for 5 years. However, a lot of people are working a little bit longer, so each person's set of circumstances is going to be a little bit different. Okay, um, there definitely is a major issue if people pass away, and so what we found over the years, it was this old mental kind of shift of perspective that, hey, when I'm older, I won't really need life insurance because I'll be in retire mode and my surviving spouse will be able to deal with all that. The reality is that um, life insurance has a a tax-free death benefit that can help replenish the loss of benefit when someone does pass away, especially when their life insurance, excuse me, their pension or Social Security are such a large number for their overall retirement picture. And it allows us to be able to make sure that we're duplicating that income so that way their lifestyle can continue to be the same. So, another one to be able to bridge people's needs is to be able to have a look at leveraging a immediate annuity. So, very similar to um, creating your own Social Security, you're creating your own personal pension, you can leverage the money that you've saved over these years from your 401k or from your mutual funds, from a investment account, and then putting that into an immediate annuity to duplicate that stream of income, and that can be really helpful for folks. So on this, let me just end the slideshow. Do you have any questions, anybody, with what you might be seeing? Let's go here. Any questions in the chat? Let's see here on Instagram. Okay. So, question: how can I figure out how to get analysis? Okay. So, what you can do, and a variety of different companies, insurance agents, financial advisors will run these typically at no cost. Sometimes they'll charge like $50 or $200 to do it. But basically, what you can do is you can find out your Social Security data, your numbers. What are they? And then you can then share that with this individual, again, insurance agent, financial advisor, and then they can run the analysis for you. And what it'll do is it'll show you, okay, your benefit pulling at age 62, how much is it being reduced in the overall benefit total compensation, versus if I waited, till age 66 and some months, the full retirement age, the FRA, or I wait all the way until age 70. What I found for a lot of people is today isn't our grandparents' retirement. Now, it might literally be your grandparents' retirement, but when you think about your retirement, if retirement isn't around the corner in the next 5 to 7 years, the way that you and I retire looks much different, because the majority of what we're going to be relying on for our retirement is going to be our own income and our own savings. I find that a lot of people don't are choosing different work environments, and so they're not necessarily looking for this. I can go sit, sit on the beach and just hang out the rest of my life, just read books, or just do the crossword, or just go on a cruise for the rest of my life. They're seeing that there's a lot of value in still being able to work, having purpose. A lot of people have gotten involved beyond way into their hobbies or nonprofits or different organizations to be able to make sure that they're leveraging their time. And I find for a lot of people too, if they can reduce um, their they can reduce that they're only dealing with people that are the same age. They can deal with some people that are younger, who are filled with dreams and aspirations and goals. That helps youngify that person and not them be surrounded by other people that are having physical ailments that are slowing down. It helps their mind as well, because they're associating with a variety of different people. Next question. Um, how do I know I'm gonna outlive my income? Okay, that's a really good one. So a lot of your financial planners out there do have different software, different planning tools, that if you were to give them your information about, your age, all your investments are, what your risk tolerance is, like, so how comfortable you feel with risk, they can basically run a projection. Of, hey, you're getting 5% rate of return, you have inflation built in here. What does that look like on your particular budget? Do you have enough income? Um, Next question, where can I save? So I would say for a lot of people, having more control, more flexibility in your savings and investments is going to be for your advantage, right? So you're going to have work 401ks. For some people at work, they have a Roth 401k to be able to contribute into that tax-free bucket. Others have IRAs that they're dealing with. Other people have mutual funds that they've set aside, or some specific stock that they've bought, or bonds. And outside of their current retirement, that's another place. Another one that I would have a look at for a lot of people is, their part-time work. Maybe I'm going to part-time work from age 65 to 67, or from say age 70 to 67 or 77. So for 7 years in my 70s, I still want to work a part-time job, 20 hours a week, and what can that provide me in terms of income? Another one that a lot of people kind of neglect is things that can actually earn you income, right? So that could be things like rental property, Airbnb. If you decide to go on long cruises, or you decide to leave your house, you can use that to be able to help add a little bit of cash flow into your pocket. There are some other things that people do depending on their circumstances. Some people start writing books, right? And hey, it's another extra $100 a month that seems to be coming in, by writing this children's book, or by writing your memoirs, if you will, your autobiography on the lessons that you've learned, and that can be another way to be able to pull in a stream of income. For a lot of people, they end up jumping into retirement and they wing it. They think that, oh, it'll all come together, but they're not really talking to the right people. People's circumstances are so different, right? And so you want to be able to have a look at Social Security. A lot of times we'll ask people in retirement, what are you going to be where are you going to spend the most amount of money? Is it going to be health insurance? Is it going to be potential long-term care event, right? Needing a nursing home kind of care at your house? Or finally, the third one is it going to be taxes? And so those are some three major areas to be planning for, to make sure that you're going to that you're not going to outlive your income, that you're going to be able to make sure that your income is growing and developing, and able to stay above inflation. So there's a lot of opportunity here to be able to make sure that you're doing it the right way. If I can be of any assistance, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me at my cell, 262-271-4411, or of course, feel free to email me, sherman.on@mutualmohan.com. I see a couple more questions coming in here on the Instagram. I'll answer those privately, and you guys have yourselves a fantastic day. Sherm's out.